Republican nominee Harriet Hageman believes that coal is the real clean energy. Ah, yes. Now, the replacement for Representative Liz Cheney, who had just lost her primary, said this at a luncheon last week for the Chamber of Commerce of Rock Springs. After promising to defend the industry, she told their representatives that coal is both an affordable, clean, and acceptable resource that we should all be using. Ah, yes, we should all be using coal because, you know, coal, well known for being very, very clean.
Clean coal, meaning they're taking out coal, they're going to clean it.
See, you take the coal out, you clean it, you just brush it down. Okay, you take a scrub brush. Okay, it's got to have the bristles on it. Okay, and you take the brush and you scrub the coal. Okay, you scrub it and you scrub it and you scrub it until there's nothing left, and that's how it's clean. And then you don't burn it. And that's the only way. That's the only way that it can be clean coal. No, it's ridiculous. And by the way, she ignores how the planet is on fire and basically wants to continue burning the coal. Great. Fantastic. Now, look, Hageman, again, huge defender of not just coal, but other fossil fuels, oil and natural gas, and has actually spent most of her career fighting against clean air and clean water. Now, again, she is a ghoul, okay? And she just won the Republican primary against Liz Cheney. Now, here's the thing about Liz Cheney. Substantively, I believe that there's going to be very little, if any, policy changes if she wins her general election, which she's, of course, very likely to do, Hageman. Okay, so before I get into that, though, and more of my personal opinion about what happened with Liz Cheney, I want to get into more information about Hageman and what to expect. So now Hageman has been described as the anti-conservation zealot. Given her years as a trial lawyer, fighting environmentalists in court, and her expressed disdain for the very idea of protected federal lands. The oil and gas industry was among the corporate interests that helped her fund her campaign against Cheney, who was also a vocal supporter of fossil fuel development. For 3 decades, Hageman had been sparring with environmentalists, suing federal agencies over land use decisions, and advocating for transferring control of federal lands to states, according to HuffPost's Chris D'Angelo. It's a record of anti-conservation, anti-government zealotry that once earned her the nickname Wicked Witch of the West among environmentalists, a title that she had embraced. Come next year, D'Angelo warned Hageman could be Wyoming's new at-large congresswoman, and if she has it her way, a member of the House committee with jurisdiction over energy development, public lands, and wildlife. Fantastic. In a December appearance on former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon's podcast, Hageman boasted this, quote, "I've taken on the EPA, I've taken on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, oh wow, great, and I've taken on the USDA. Ah, yes, I have taken on the people who are trying to make your food safe, your air breathable, and your water non-toxic. Look at me. Isn't that such a great record? Wow. Hageman is also currently listed as a senior litigation attorney in the website The New Civil Liberties Alliance, a right-wing legal group that opposes any climate regulations. As the New York Times notes, her most far-reaching case as a trial lawyer was a successful challenge of Clinton-era federal regulations to protect millions of acres of national forests from road building, mining, and other development. And so, knowing this, or probably not knowing this, or not caring about this, the Chuds rejoiced and they voted for her en masse. Liz Cheney got blown out. Now, that's not to say that Liz Cheney is any better on those issues. No, Liz Cheney voted 93% of the time with Trump. So understand that from a policy perspective, we're not really getting anything that's much different in Wyoming. Look, let me give you a couple of examples of Cheney. She had co-sponsored a bill last year to bring back something called the Coal Council. So to try to continue to encourage, I guess, the Biden administration to use coal, to rely on coal, and then introduced legislation to end the suspension of oil and gas leases. And of course, went after the Green New Deal. So any liberal that is out there that is saying, oh, Liz Cheney, the loss is immense. We have lost a real champion here. A champion for what? She's literally just doing the very basics of her job. And that was to try to prevent a takeover by Donald Trump of the presidency, to try to stop him from stealing an election. Again, she is 100%, and I'm talking about Liz Cheney, for fossil fuels. Very, very little policy distinctions between the two. But of course, the real reason that she lost in Wyoming is because she didn't support God Emperor Trump. And that's it. His entire, plan to spread the big lie about, mass voter fraud, which didn't exist, and to try to send fake electors, all that stuff. All of his crying, essentially, for the last 2 years, losing to Joe Biden. If you don't support Trump, if you don't support those lies as a Republican, you get voted out. Now, that is, of course, democracy. And I actually, unlike Trump supporters, do believe in democracy, but it still can lead to ugly results. Okay. Again, she lost because she didn't support him. And in a very rare principled stance, she did not bend the knee to Trump. Now, Hageman, of course, did. So here's the difference, right? So Hageman, back in 2016, was a Liz Cheney ally and called Trump, quote, someone who was racist and xenophobic, and even attempted to thwart his nomination during that year's Republican National Convention. Hageman now disowns the previous statements on Trump, saying, oh, I was led astray by the lies the Democrats and Liz Cheney's friends in the media were telling at the time. And then said on the campaign trail, quote, absolutely, the election was rigged. What happened in 2020 was a travesty. Now, again, I give you all this context because I want to point out the fact that this primary was not about the issues. When it came down to policy, again, Hageman and Cheney were roughly about the same. And Liz Cheney is about a ghoul in 100 different ways. But she did her job. She did her job as a congresswoman to actually try to hold a person of power accountable. Now, here's the thing, though. It's a low bar. But in our context today, that bar, as low as it is, very few Republicans are ever going to clear that bar. And that's sad. That is incredibly sad. So again, overall, my personal opinion is this. I don't feel bad for Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney's going to be fine. Okay? Liz Cheney's going to be fine. Wyoming, their politics is basically going to be absolutely the same. There's going to be very, very little change. Okay? If any change at all. And I do think that this is also a foregone conclusion. Because we know now that and we've known for quite some time, that the Republican Party isn't a political party anymore. It's basically a fan club. It's a Trump fan club. It's the party of Trump. And what I hope is that we can extract a lesson from this loss. Democrats, understand. And I'm talking to elected Democrats who seem to think that, no, you don't understand. The fever's going to break. The Republican Party will, come back to sanity. Donald Trump will lose his grip on the party. And finally, we can get back to having normal Republicans. No, there is no such thing. There is no such thing. And by the way, we don't need a strong Republican Party headed up by people like Liz Cheney, because as I pointed out before, in her policy positions, voted 93% with Trump on horrific policy positions. The kind of policies that will exacerbate climate change, which is an existential threat, or helps giant corporations, giving them massive tax cuts, going against LGBTQ people, all that stuff. That's what the Republican Party policy-wise stands for. And so we don't need a strong Republican Party. And we don't need that strong Republican Party headed up with people like Liz Cheney. We don't. We don't need Trump-style extremists, and we don't need establishment Republicans. What we need in reality is a strong left. We need a strong progressive left to counter the right wing on more than just Trump. We actually have to, talk about actual policies like healthcare, environmental justice, racial justice, education, higher wages for working people. See, look, seeing Cheney be replaced by someone who's almost exactly the same, except for a slavish devotion to Donald Trump, is not a shock to me. This is not surprising. And it doesn't really change a whole lot of things. All it really does is prove, assuming, that they're actually willing to see this, it just cements that the modern Republican Party is the cult of Trump and needs to be absolutely dismantled. The entire thing. Get rid of it. The country would be better off without this Republican Party.